leader realizes that leadership is about problem solving. In fact, your work is not just to identify problems, but your work is also to come up with solutions to solve those problems and challenges. Welcome again to the Amisi Leadership Podcast, where we are so passionate about leadership. We equip leaders with practical, high-capacity tools to drive social transformation in whatever space that they are in of leadership and throughout the leadership journey. Every week we drop content on leadership. And if you want to get more of these, I'll kindly ask you to subscribe. Don't just like, but subscribe. Share it with those that you care for, those people that you know would need this kind of content to improve and better their leadership journey. But for you to get more of my content, I'll ask you to visit Amazon and get my latest book, Seed It Out, How Great Leaders Become Great Leader Makers. And that will be one of the biggest decisions you'll have ever made in your leadership journey. We've been talking about servant leadership as counterculture, as a model of leadership that, inspires, influences, and has bigger, better results than the kind of leadership that we see everywhere we go, of people projecting titles and rank and being authoritarian. And we started off by introducing 3 pillars that, in my opinion, are negotiables for any servant leader, for servanthood kind of leadership. And the first one we gave you was mentality, how servant leaders think. And then last week we talked to you about the right motive of leadership. And we told you, listen, every leader has to ask themselves this question: why do I lead? Am I leading for the right reasons? What's my motivation for leading? We learned that leadership starts from the heart before it is a skill. Your heart has to be postured right. In fact, if your heart is right, you will lead right. If your heart is not in the right place, then that will be seen in your leadership, will be seen in how you're driving the people that are around you. So mark this. If your heart is right, you will lead right. We gave you a few marks of right motivation for leadership, and we told you authenticity is one of them. You've got to be authentic if you're going to be a great leader. Not only are you supposed to be authentic, we told you need to be selfless as a leader. It's not about you. It is about the people that you lead. And we talked to you about humility, why it's important for every leader to see leadership as an opportunity to drive the success of the organization. Not about them, not about their ego, but putting the organization first. We also brought to you the 3 marks that, in my opinion, I feel are wrong motives for leadership. That if you have these wrong motives, these marks, then you know your motivation for leadership is all wrong. We talked to you about popularity, wanting to be noticed, being bigger. It's not about the vision or the purpose of the organization. At the end of the day, it's all about you. We talked to you about pretense, where you are creating a wrong impression of not really who you are. What people see is not what they get. You're different in private, as compared to who you are in public when people are around you. We talked about pride, where you put your ego first, and now you're driven just by pride, and you see success as a way of building your name. So what you do is that when things go right, you take all the praise, and when things are bad, you blame everybody around you, thinking and saying they didn't follow my strategies or didn't follow my tactics, because at the end of the day, it's all about you. I want to give you on this week's episode the 3rd pillar of servanthood, of servant leadership. And I call it solid maturity. I call it maturity. And this is how I define it, that maturity is the ability to exercise self-control over emotions and make sound decisions rooted in principles. I'm going to say this again. Maturity is the ability to exercise control over emotions and make sound decisions rooted in principles. It's really your capacity to relate with people and deal with offenses in leadership. Because in leadership, you will be offended. You will be disappointed. And maturity is really your capacity to be able to relate with different kinds of people and be able to deal with offenses that come with the calling of leadership. In other words, you have developed emotional intelligence while at the same time growing in your capacity to deal with people as you navigate through offenses caused sometimes by those around you that you lead. That's maturity. That you're able to relate with people, different kinds of people. You've developed emotional intelligence. You're able to navigate through the offenses that come with the leadership. Then we would say you're maturing or you've matured as a leader. And those of you who've been in leadership would agree with me that as you lead, you get different kinds of people. And we have people in leadership who are in there not because of their maturity, but maybe because they have great resumes. They had a good, their curriculum vitae was so impressive that they were given the job. But then as much as they are good when it comes to academics, but when it comes to people skills or leading people, they do very badly. That if you saw their CV, you'll be so impressed by what they've accomplished, how high they've gone in terms of academia. But then when you give them some 10, 15 people to lead, that's when things start to go south. Because they developed their IQ, but they never developed their EQ. They've developed and built their intelligence quotient, but they've never invested in the emotional quotient. Meaning that as leaders, they're not mature. Let me share with you marks of maturity. Marks of maturity that would make you stand out as a mature leader. One is personal security. Personal security. You see, in personal security, you as a leader have realized that you're not competing with anyone in the organization. You are there to complement one another, and your focus is more on the goal in the organization. The goal, you realize, is greater than the role. Let me take that again. That as a leader, you realize that where you are, you're not competing with anyone in the organization. You are there to complement one another. The goal of the organization becomes so super important to you that that's why you become laser focused on. You've learned this lesson that the goal is bigger than the role. It is not so much about my role. At the end of the day, what is so important is us achieving our goal. You are so secure in your flesh. In personal security, you realize that, listen, if somebody is better in some other fields, in some other ways that I'm not better in or I'm weak in, you don't get insecure. Because if you get insecure, then you start to control people. People who do not have personal security, who are not secure in their calling, control people. You make sure you pull them back. You don't allow them to develop and grow to a certain extent because your fear is if they excel, maybe they'll outsmart me. Maybe they'll be more recognized. But if you're mature, you get to understand there are areas I'm strong at. I'm going to maximize myself in those areas. There are areas I'm weak at, and there are people in the team who are better in those areas. I will push them forward to thrive in those areas, especially in areas that are their sweet spot. You have personal security and you're maturing as a leader. Number 2, you are people smart. A mature leader, not only do they have personal security, but they're people smart. You are able to motivate and challenge those that you lead to be more than they think they can be. A people smart leader is able to motivate and challenge those that they lead to be more than they think they can be. You are able to connect with them at their level and influence them to aspire for greatness as you help them to discover their potential. A people smart leader is able to connect with people, all kinds of people, difficult, good, complicated, complex, easy people, able to connect with them, influence them as you build relationships, and even be able to influence them to aspire for greatness as you help them to discover their potential. You see, you learn that the effective leadership is the ability to get things done through others. People smart leaders. No, I don't have to do everything. I can lead through others. I can get things done through others. Remember the first mark that we talked about, personal security? If you're personally secure, then the end result is that you'll be a people smart leader. And you learn this key thing that, listen, I can delegate stuff to be done and I'll be able to lead through others. I don't have to be the one who does everything. I am people smart. You know how to relate with people. You know how to not export your emotions from home, your personal life into the office, especially if those emotions are not good emotions, maybe things are not working out. You know how to handle people properly and put aside your negative feelings on other issues and learn that, you know what, I've got to learn and develop people skills. Now, being people smart is a skill that you develop. You've got to develop it daily. It is not something that just comes. You've got to develop it if you're going to be mature in leadership. So a mark of maturity, personal security, and being people smart. The third one is progressive capacity development. And this, the long and short of these too long a word is the fact that you keep on developing yourself daily. You develop, you invest in your perpetual self-growth as a leader. Leaders who don't develop, leaders who don't grow, will always be insecure about those who develop and grow. Hear me, right? Leaders who don't develop themselves, leaders who don't invest in their perpetual self-growth, will always be insecure and try to control those who are intentionally developing themselves and growing. You see, when you start doing this, you get to a point where you start being aware of your capacity. And as you're aware of your capacity, you also get aware and identify areas where you have capacity gaps, and you start to work to grow yourself. And all these things, the growth and investing in yourself comes through training, exposure, and equipping. You invest in training. You invest in reading, exposing yourself so that you can bridge some of the gaps that you have as a leader. You've got to understand that between who you are today as a leader and what you want to become as a leader is a big gap that can only be filled by training, exposure, and equipping. Training, exposure, and equipping. You can't fit or fill in that gap by just sitting around. You've got to do it. And those you lead will benefit. And this is how they will benefit. The more you grow, the more you want to lead them better, the more they also become better and you don't control them. Let me give you a last one on that score. Problem solving. Another mark of maturity is problem solving. Every leader realizes that leadership is about problem solving. You wake up in the morning, you hit that office, there's a problem for you to solve. You're leading that organization, there'll always be problems for you to solve. In fact, your work is not just to identify problems, but your work is also to come up with solutions to solve those problems and challenges. So a leader, mature leader, doesn't just complain and murmur and whine about the challenges that are there. They understand that my work in this place as a leader is to come up with solutions that will solve the problems that we are going through. I like an analogy that a good friend of mine called Tim Elmore from Atlanta, Growing Leader, says, that leaders are drivers and not passengers. That's what he says. Leaders are drivers and not passengers. You see, in a bus, a passenger can disembark at any point, especially if the bus develops a tire burst or a flat tire. Passengers can disembark. If it breaks down, they'll disembark and get another bus. But the driver can never disembark, because the driver is the driver of the bus. The driver has to come up with solution to move that bus from where it is to where it's supposed to go. Leaders are drivers. Leaders are not passengers. Would you be a problem solver? Would you move out and say, I'm not going to just whine about challenges and problems. I'm going to solve the problems that are there. If I don't solve them, no one will, because I am a leader. All right? So marks of maturity, your people smart, your personal security, progressive capacity, development, and problem solving. You do that to become a better leader. I pray that this is challenging you to invest in yourself and to be a better leader more than ever before. A leader who will change and transform those that are around them by modeling after this very counterculture style of leadership, being a servant leader, influencing those people that are around you. Again, if this is building and impacting you, I'll ask you to share with friends, share with people on this leadership journey, and then tell us where you're watching us from. And then once you do that, I'll also challenge you, if you want more content, go to Amazon, get my latest book, Seed It Out, How Great Leaders Become Great Leader Makers. The best investment you can do for your leadership journey. See you again next week as we talk leadership and as we trust God to help us become better, make people better, make organizations better through our leadership. Shalom. See you next week.